Vivien Ashcroft was reaching for another saltine when her husband kissed another woman in front of 11 million people. The charity gala was playing on her laptop. Selena Morrow turned toward Damian, grabbed his jacket, and kissed him. Damian had time to move. He didn't. For half a second he froze, then he kissed her back. Vivien stopped chewing. Her phone began vibrating before Selena stepped away, but she didn't touch it. She kept watching Damian. His hand was still beside Selena's waist. His wedding ring was still on it. 6 seconds later, Selena smiled and stepped back. Only then did Vivien notice the saltine between her fingers. She was 11 weeks pregnant. Beside the laptop sat a cream envelope with Damian's name on it. Inside was tomorrow's ultrasound appointment and a note. "I thought you might want to see who has been making me sick every morning." Vivien looked at the envelope, then at her husband on the screen. She closed the laptop. Her tea had gone cold. She lifted the mug, held it for a second, then set it down without drinking. Damian would come home eventually. He would explain. Vivien already knew she would let him try. She just didn't know what an explanation could possibly fix. She carried the envelope into the study. For a while she only stood there. She took out her phone and opened Carolyn Marsh's contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but she had no idea what she would say if Carolyn answered. "My husband kissed his assistant on television" sounded both too large and strangely incomplete. Vivien locked the screen and set the phone on the desk. Then her eyes went to the landscape painting above the low cabinet. A steel safe was built into the wall behind it. Her father had installed it years earlier when the house still belonged to him. Damian had laughed the first time he saw it. Very dramatic. Vivien entered the combination. Inside were passports, jewelry, family papers, and a thick gray folder. Ashcroft Protective Trust, Volkov Holdings. Her father's money had once helped keep the legitimate side of the Volkov businesses from collapsing. Vivien knew the broad outline. She had never needed the details. She sat down and began reading. At first, the pages were only names, numbers, and clauses. Then they started becoming things she understood. Property still owned through Ashcroft entities. Guarantees supporting Volkov credit. Transactions Damian could make without her. Transactions he could not. At 4:47 in the morning, headlights swept across the study window. Vivien closed the folder. By the time Damian entered through the side door, she was sitting at the kitchen table with both hands around the same untouched mug. He stopped when he saw her. His tie was gone. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were open. "Vivien." He took off his jacket and laid it over a chair. "I didn't know Selena was going to do that." Vivien looked at him. He kept talking. "She made a stupid decision. She knew the cameras were there. Everything with the board, the federal pressure. I watched it twice." Damian stopped. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. "She kissed me. I saw that." His jaw tightened. Vivien looked directly at him. "You kissed her back." Damian said nothing. She waited. His eyes dropped to the table. "Yes." Vivien looked at the mug because looking at him was suddenly harder. "How long?" He didn't answer. She lifted her eyes again. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" "Vivien, don't. Just answer me." Damian stared at the table. 8 months. Vivien blinked. 8? He nodded once. 8 months reached backward through her life before she could stop it. Christmas, her birthday, the weekend in Vermont when he had slept with one hand resting on her hip. She pushed the memories away. "Does Selena know I'm pregnant?" Damian looked at her immediately. "No." "Did you plan to tell her?" "This is over." Vivien frowned. "That's not what I asked." He rubbed a hand across his mouth. "No." Vivien stood and carried the mug to the sink. Behind her, Damian said, "Vivien, please." She poured the cold tea away. "Say something." She rinsed the mug and set it on the drying rack before turning around. "You just told me you've been sleeping with another woman for 8 months. I know. No, I don't think you do." He started to speak. Vivien raised a hand. "Not tonight." Her shoulders hurt. Her eyes burned. Beneath all of it sat the dull nausea she had been carrying for weeks. "Sleep in the guest room." Damian stared at her. "We need to talk about this." "We will. When I can ask you a question without wondering how many other things you've already lied about. He went still. Vivien looked away first. The cream envelope was still on the counter. She picked it up. Damian watched her. What is that? Vivien looked at the envelope for a moment. Then she tore it through the middle. The appointment slip tore with the card. She dropped both halves into the trash. Damian's eyes followed them down. Vivien walked past him toward the stairs. He did not try to stop her. She was grateful he understood at least that much. Just after 8 the next morning, Vivien called Carolyn Marsh. She was standing in the upstairs hallway, still wearing the clothes she had slept in. The guest room door was closed. Damian was behind it. Vivien had passed the door twice and had not knocked either time. I saw the footage, Carolyn said. Carolyn skipped the greeting and the careful question about how Vivien was holding up. Vivien was grateful for that. I need the trust documents. Carolyn was quiet for a second. All of them? Everything connected to Volkov Holdings. I want to know what belongs to me, what belongs to Damian, and what can't move without my signature. Are you leaving him? Vivien looked at the closed guest room door. I don't know. The answer sounded smaller than she wanted it to. I don't know what I'm doing about the marriage yet. I just don't want to make financial decisions while I'm angry and wake up 6 months from now wishing I hadn't. Good. Come to my office at 1. Eat something first. I'll try. That means no? Probably. When the call ended, Vivien stood there another moment. The guest room door never opened. Downstairs, one corner of the torn ultrasound slip was visible in the kitchen trash. She looked away. By 1:30, Carolyn's conference table was covered in folders, trust agreements, property schedules, corporate records. Documents Vivien had signed over the years because there had always been someone she trusted to explain them. Carolyn sat across from her with reading glasses low on her nose. Your father was careful, suspicious, also accurate. That almost made Vivien smile. Carolyn opened the largest folder. When Harrison helped stabilize the Volkov businesses, he didn't just hand over money. Some Ashcroft entities kept ownership of property the Volkov companies use, and some of your family's assets still support major credit lines. Vivien stared at the page. Explain it without sounding like a lawyer. Carolyn took off her glasses. Damian runs his company. You cannot walk in tomorrow and take it from him, but there are certain assets he cannot sell, pledge, or restructure without Ashcroft consent because your family's property is still underneath them. She turned the document around. Vivien read the marked paragraph. Sell, pledge, restructure, consent of the Ashcroft beneficiary. Her name appeared beneath it. So what can I do today? Separate what is already separate, nothing more. Carolyn slid a legal pad toward her. You can resign from Volkov charitable boards, you can remove Damian's office from your personal accounts, and you can notify the trustees that no extraordinary transaction involving Ashcroft-protected property is approved without your written consent. Will any of that hurt payroll? No. Employees? No. Normal operations? No. Vivien picked up the pen. Do it. Carolyn watched her for a moment. Once the notices go out, Damian will know. Vivien set the pen down. He kissed his assistant on live television. I think we're past subtle. Carolyn gave the smallest smile. Fair enough. At 3:30, Vivien went to the ultrasound appointment alone. She almost canceled in the elevator, then in the parking garage. Then again when the receptionist asked, Will anyone be joining you? No. The answer came out too quickly. The examination room was colder than she expected. Vivien lay back while the technician prepared the machine and tried not to look at the empty chair near the wall. Damian was supposed to be in it. He would have asked too many questions. He would have pretended to understand the screen before he did. She had spent days imagining the exact moment he heard the heartbeat. The technician dimmed the lights. A fast, steady sound filled the room. Vivien stopped thinking. That's the heartbeat. Her hand moved to her stomach. The sound was quick and insistent, almost impatient. Vivien stared at the screen until the edges of it blurred. When the appointment ended, the technician handed her a black and white print. Everything looks good. Thank you. Vivien slipped the image into her handbag. She did not put it inside a card. Over the next 2 days she kept moving, because sitting still was worse. 3 Volkov charity boards received her resignation. Damian's office lost mailing authority on 2 investment accounts Vivien had owned before the marriage. A women's leadership event changed its printed program from Vivien Volkov to Vivien Ashcroft. Carolyn took over all communication involving the trust and the marriage. Vivien did not touch company money. She did not touch anything that belonged to Damian. She only stopped letting her own things answer to him. The clip from the gala stayed everywhere. Business channels replayed it beside discussions of Volkov Holdings. Reporters waited outside 2 offices. People who had never met Vivien debated whether she would forgive her husband. Damian sent 3 messages. We need to talk. Later, I will be home by 7. Then, please answer me. Vivien read them all. Each time his name lit the screen, her thumb hovered over it longer than she wanted. Each time, she put the phone face down. 2 mornings after the ultrasound, Selina Morrow came to the mansion. Vivien heard her voice from upstairs. Mr. Volkov said he'd be back before noon. I can wait in the study. The household manager hesitated. Mrs. Volkov is home. Silence. Vivien came down the stairs. Selina stood in the foyer in a camel-colored coat, a leather portfolio tucked against her side. Up close, she looked nothing like the woman smiling under gala lights. Vivien, why are you here? Damian needs some documents before a meeting. I didn't realize you were. She stopped. Home? Selina's fingers tightened around the portfolio. I didn't mean it like that. This is my home. Where did you think I would be? I don't know. At least that sounded honest. I didn't come here to make things worse. Vivien almost laughed. 11 million people watched you kiss my husband. Selina looked down. I know. You knew the cameras were there. Yes, and you did it anyway. Selina swallowed. What happened that night was complicated. So I've heard. Vivien opened the front door. You should leave. Vivien, there are things you don't know. There seem to be a lot of those. Selina took a breath. I think you deserve to understand. I'm 11 weeks pregnant. Selina stopped. The portfolio lowered in her hand. What? Whatever she had been prepared to say disappeared from her face. Vivien watched her and knew almost immediately that Selina had not known. I'm pregnant. Selina looked at the floor. He didn't tell me. No. Vivien held the door open wider. Now you know. Selina left without another word. Only after the door closed did Vivien notice her hand shaking against the banister. Marco Reyes called that afternoon. Mrs. Volkov, it's Marco. Vivien sat down on the edge of the sofa. What is it? He hesitated. People knew. Her fingers tightened around the phone. About Selina? Yes. Rourke knew. 2 captains knew for certain. A few others suspected. How long? I don't know. Why didn't anyone tell me? Marco took too long to answer. Marco, because they thought you'd leave. That seems reasonable. That wasn't what worried them. Vivien frowned. What did? They didn't think you actually would. Why? His answer came quietly. Because they thought you were manageable. Vivien stared at the front door. The word manageable stayed with her. Mrs. Volkov, thank you for telling me. I'm sorry. I know. She ended the call. For 2 days, Vivien had worried that leaving would be an angry decision she might regret. After Marco's call, staying was the thing she could no longer explain. That evening, Vivien drove to the Upper East Side apartment she had owned before she married Damian. She had not planned to go there when she woke up. By dinner, she could not imagine spending another night at the mansion. The apartment had been rented for most of the past 8 years. The last tenant had moved out 2 months earlier, and Vivien had barely thought about it since. Damian did not know it was empty. She had never kept it as an escape route. Until this week, she had never believed she would need one. She unlocked the door. The place smelled faintly of paint and closed windows. A narrow console stood in the entryway. The living room was empty. Somewhere behind the wall, a pipe knocked twice. Then the apartment went still. There was no security radio in the hall, no staff moving downstairs, no sound outside that made her wonder whether Damian had come home. Vivien walked into the bedroom and opened the empty closet. Without meaning to, she pictured her clothes hanging there. Then the thought kept moving. A toothbrush in the bathroom. Her shoes by this door instead of the one at the mansion. Another doctor appointment with the chair beside her empty. And one day maybe a small bed for a child who would have a room here and another room somewhere else. Vivien sat on the edge of the staging mattress and pressed both hands over her face. She stayed that way until her breathing slowed. Then she stood. She did not need to decide the rest of her life tonight. She only needed somewhere Damian could not enter because his name was on the deed. The next morning, while he was at the office, Vivien returned to the mansion. She packed 2 suitcases, clothes, medication, her laptop, toiletries, the gray trust folder. From the study, she took the box containing her father's letters. In the bedroom, Damian's watch case sat on the dresser. His side of the bed was unmade. Vivien opened one drawer, then shut it again, without taking anything from it. The jewelry he had given her stayed. So did the silver tea service from their wedding and the paintings they had bought together. Anything that would become an argument stayed where it was. She carried the second suitcase downstairs. In the kitchen, the chair Damian had used during their 4:47 conversation was pushed neatly under the table. Someone had emptied the trash. The torn ultrasound card was gone. Vivien stopped. For one second, she pictured Damian finding it there. She did not let herself wonder what he had done with it. She pulled off her wedding ring. The skin beneath the ring was lighter than the rest of her hand. Vivien rubbed the mark once with her thumb, turned the ring between her fingers, and placed it on the counter. Beside it, she left a folded note. Damian, the appointment went well. The baby is healthy. Carolyn Marsh represents me from this point forward. Do not come to the apartment if you learn the address. I will contact you when I am ready to discuss what happens next. Vivien? She read it once. 100 other sentences came to her. She left every one of them off the page. Then she picked up her suitcase and left. Damian found the ring shortly after 6 that evening. He was speaking into his phone when he entered the kitchen. He stopped in the middle of a sentence and ended the call. The ring sat on top of the note. He did not touch either one at first. Then he picked up the paper. He read it once. Then again. His eyes stopped on the same sentence. The baby is healthy. He called Vivien. The number no longer connected. He tried again. Same result. Then he called Carolyn Marsh. Her assistant answered. I need to speak with Vivien. I'm sorry, Mr. Volkov. Mrs. Ashcroft has instructed that all communication regarding her personal and legal matters go through this office. I'm her husband. A pause. Yes, sir. Damian looked at the ring. Put Carolyn on. Miss Marsh is unavailable. When will she be available? During office hours tomorrow. This concerns my wife and my child. I understand. Damian closed his eyes. Tell Carolyn I called. I will. 40 minutes later, Rourke sat across from him at the kitchen table. Damian placed Carolyn's name between them. You know her. Rourke's expression shifted. She handled matters for Harrison Ashcroft. Trusts? Property? Yes. Damian picked up Vivien's ring. Who knew about Selena? Rourke looked at the ring instead of him. Damian, give me a number. Rourke took a breath. 6 people knew or suspected enough to understand what was happening. 6. Yes, and nobody told Vivien. It was considered personal. Damian gave a short laugh with no humor in it. I kissed Selena in front of every camera in Manhattan. How personal does it feel now? Rourke's jaw tightened. We expected you to handle it. Damian set the ring down. You expected Vivien to stay. Rourke said nothing. Narcook paid her. Rourke looked up sharply. He had no authority to do that. If you touch Marco, you're finished here. Damian, he told my wife the truth. That is not the loyalty problem. Rourke's face hardened. My job is to protect you. Then stop deciding what I can afford not to know. The room went quiet. Damian looked at the ring again. From now on, you tell me. I decide what matters. Rourke nodded once. Understood. After Rourke left, Damian stayed at the table. Vivien's rinsed mug was still upside down on the drying rack, and her ring lay beside his hand. He had lived in the house for years. He had never noticed how much noise her presence had filled until it was gone. If you were Vivien at that point, would you still want one last conversation? Or would you be afraid that one more answer would only give you one more thing to carry? Damian slept for less than 3 hours. By 8 the next morning, he was back in the study in yesterday's shirt, staring at coffee he had forgotten to drink. Vivien's ring was still in his pocket. His phone buzzed. Chen. What? I need 20 minutes. For what? Something you need to see. Evan Chen arrived carrying a laptop and one thin folder. He sat across from Damian. First, Vivien hasn't touched the company. I didn't ask if she had. Half the board did. Normal operations continue. She only locked extraordinary moves behind her signature. Damian rubbed a hand over his face. Then why are you here? Chen opened the folder. This. The document was dated 2 days before the gala. A Brooklyn riverfront distribution terminal was being placed into a collateral package for a short-term credit facility with Vantage Harbor Partners. Near the bottom was a consent line. Vivien Ashcroft, consenting beneficiary. Her signature appeared beneath it. Damian stared at the page. She signed this? That's what the file says. No. Chen waited. Damian pushed the page away, then pulled it back again. No. Why are you so sure? Because Vivien reads parking receipts before she throws them away. She would not sign something involving her father's trust without Carolyn reading it first. I called Marsh. Her office wouldn't discuss it. Damian looked at the signature. It looked right. That was what bothered him. He knew the shape of that V. He had watched Vivien write it on restaurant receipts, birthday cards, and donation forms. He had watched her complain that her married name ruined the balance of her signature and then practice it on a napkin until he laughed at her. His thumb stopped beside the line. Has the deal closed? No. Final ratification is in 48 hours. Stop it. I can delay it. If I kill it without cause, Vantage can claim breach before funding. Delay it. Already done. Damian stood. Only a few days had passed since the gala. Vivien had left the house. Her ring was in his pocket. Now a document carrying her name had surfaced from before the scandal even broke. Who brought Vantage in? Lucian's investment team. Damian turned. And the consent. Uploaded through the Volkov Foundation archive. Who had access? Legal. Foundation staff. Your office. Lucian's legal team had temporary archive approval. Chen hesitated. And the file metadata shows Selena's credentials were used on the Ashcroft authorization. Damian's expression changed. When? I don't have the full access log yet. Get it? Damian called Selena. Come to conference room 6. I'm already on my way to the office. Don't log into anything. Come straight there. She arrived 25 minutes later. The forged consent was waiting on the table. Damian turned it toward her. Selena looked down. The color left her face. You know this document. I've seen the Vantage name. Your credentials opened an old Ashcroft authorization. Selena went still. What did you give Lucian? She said nothing. Selena? Her chair moved back. I need a lawyer. Damian watched her stand. Yes, he said. You do. An hour later, Lucian called. I hear finance is ruining your morning. Damian looked at Vivien's copied signature. You hear a lot. Small family. Apparently. Let me handle Vantage. With everything happening at home, you have enough problems. Damian looked at the phone in his hand. There were dozens of ordinary messages from Vivien above the silence of the past week. Grocery lists, arrival times, a photo of a crooked lampshade, things that had seemed permanent because nobody ever called them important. No. Lucian paused. No. I'll handle Vantage myself. Suit yourself. The line went dead. Damian stayed at the desk with the forged consent in front of him. He should have been thinking about Vantage. Instead, his eyes kept returning to Vivien's name at the bottom of the page. Carolyn called Vivien at 9 the next morning. I need you in the office. Vivien was standing barefoot in the apartment kitchen with a piece of toast in one hand and her phone in the other. Damian's contact was open on the screen. She had not called him. She had only been looking at the name. What happened? Someone signed yours. Vivien put the toast down. I'll be there in 40 minutes. A single document waited in the middle of Carolyn's conference table. Vivien recognized the signature before she read anything else. Her own. I didn't sign this. I know. Carolyn pulled an old Ashcroft Women's Initiative authorization from a second folder and placed it beside the Vantage consent. 2 years ago. Vivien leaned over the table. The signatures were identical. The same angle on the V, the same small break near the final letter, even the same faint scanner mark. Carolyn tapped the pages. Nobody signs the exact same way twice, not pixel for pixel. Vivien sat down. Her hands had gone cold. Someone had not guessed at her signature. Someone had gone looking for it. Where did they get this? An old Foundation file. Vivien touched the older document. Her father had made her read everything before she signed it, even when she was a teenager, and thought he was being ridiculous. If your name is on it, you should know what you agreed to. She could hear him saying it. I wasn't even in the room. Carolyn looked at her. No. Vivien let out a breath that almost became a laugh. That seems to be happening a lot lately. Carolyn slid the financing summary toward her. Vantage Harbor Partners was formed 9 weeks before the gala. The registered agent handles private investments connected to Lucien. Vivien read the name twice. What does Vantage get? The Brooklyn terminal becomes collateral for the bridge facility. If the Ashcroft guarantee disappears and Volkov cannot replace it within 30 days, Vantage gets an option to acquire the terminal at this price. Vivien looked at the number. That's low. Very. She sat back. So if I found out about Damian, left, and protected the trust? The clock starts, and Vantage is waiting. Yes. Vivien stared at the forged consent. The kiss had not become less personal. It had become useful to somebody else. Carolyn's assistant knocked. There's someone asking to see Mrs. Ashcroft. Who? Selina Marrow. She has an attorney with her. Vivien's stomach tightened. Carolyn watched her. I can send her away. Vivien remembered Selina in the foyer, hearing the word pregnant and losing every prepared expression she had. Let her in. Selina entered carrying only her phone. She looked as though she had not slept. Her lawyer sat beside her. Selina stayed standing for a moment, then took the chair opposite Vivien. I won't take long. That depends on what you came to say. Selina swallowed. I knew Lucien before the affair. Carolyn picked up a pen. How long? Vivien asked. About 6 months before it started. He approached me because I worked close to Damian. At first he paid for schedules, meetings, names, who Damian trusted. Did Damian know? No. And then you started sleeping with him. Selina looked down. That wasn't Lucien's idea. Good. I need at least one thing not to belong to him. Selina flinched. Lucien found out a few weeks after the affair started. After that, he asked for more. Vivien pointed at the consent. Did you give him my signature? I pulled an old Foundation authorization. He told me legal needed the format for a board package. You believed him? Then? Yes. Yesterday? No. Selina unlocked her phone and pushed it across the table. After Damian confronted me, Lucien sent this. Delete everything. If Ashcroft challenges the consent, you never saw it. Carolyn leaned forward. Do not delete anything. I haven't. Anything else? Selina scrolled. The earlier message was shorter. Once she walks, the trust gets defensive. Vantage closes before the bank reprices the terminal. Vivien read it twice. Once she walks. Selina looked away. Lucien wanted the affair public. He told me if I kept hiding it, he would expose the payments and the affair himself. So you kissed Damian in front of the cameras? Yes. Vivien looked at her. Did Lucien make Damian kiss you back? Selina lowered her eyes. No. Vivien nodded once. She had watched Damian kiss Selina back. Hearing Selina confirm it still landed harder than she expected. Why are you here? Because Lucien told me to delete everything. I almost did. Then I realized that once the messages were gone, I'd be the next problem he needed gone. Carolyn held out her hand. With your permission, we're making a forensic copy. Selina gave her the phone. Do it. Her lawyer stood. The meeting was over. Selina reached for her bag, then stopped. There's something else. Vivien wished there weren't. Selina rubbed her thumb against the edge of the empty phone case. I used to hate when you called him. Vivien frowned. Why? Because sometimes he'd leave. The room seemed to narrow. One night we were at dinner. You texted that you weren't feeling well. He put his coat on before I finished reading your name on the screen. Vivien knew the night before Selina said anything else. March. The migraine had started behind her left eye. Damian had come home with painkillers and sat on the edge of the bed until the room stopped spinning. Vivien had believed he had come straight from a meeting. Did he ever tell you he was leaving me? Selina shook her head. No. Did he promise you he would? No. Selina's eyes filled. I kept telling myself that if he kept coming back to me, it had to mean something. Vivien remembered Damian's hand against her forehead that night. It had a restaurant attached to the beginning of it now. Selina stood. Vivien, I'm sorry. I know you are. Selina waited. It doesn't help me yet. She nodded and left. The door closed. Vivien sat very still. Carolyn did not tell her what to feel. Vivien looked at her phone. Damian's name was still there. I still want to call him. The admission came out quietly. Vivien gave a tired, embarrassed laugh. I hate that. Carolyn pushed a glass of water toward her. Drink. Vivien looked at her. That's your advice? Right now? Yes. Vivien took the glass. For a few seconds, neither of them said anything. By noon, Selina's phone was with Carolyn's forensic consultant. Across town, Chen was pulling archive logs from the Volkov side. Vivien was still at the conference table when Carolyn dropped a sleeve of saltines beside her. Eat. I'm not hungry. 2. Are you billing me for this? Absolutely. Vivien took one. Before she finished it, the office phone rang. Carolyn listened, then held out the receiver. Damian, Vantage. Vivien took it. I'm not discussing the marriage. I know. His voice sounded rougher than it had on television. She hated that she still heard the difference. Selina brought you the phone? He asked. And a lawyer. Did she show you Lucien's messages? Yes. A pause. Then Damian asked, Have you eaten? Vivien closed her eyes. The old answer rose before she could stop it. A little. I'm fine. Don't what? Don't sound like my husband when it gets hard for you to remember you're not. The line went quiet. You're right, he said. Vivien pressed her fingers to the edge of the table. She had been ready for an argument. His agreement left her with nowhere to put the anger. Did Selina tell you what Lucien wanted from the gala? She told me enough. What does that mean? It means he wanted the affair exposed. What happened after she walked up to you is still yours. Damian did not defend himself. Yes. Chen is pulling the archive logs now, he said. I should have them within the hour. Send them to Carolyn. I will. That should have ended the call. Vivien kept the receiver against her ear. There was one question she had not wanted to ask Selina because the answer belonged to Damian. One more thing, she said. A pause. That night in March, were you with her before you came home to me? The pause answered first. Yes. Vivien stared at the tabletop. Vivien. No, I asked because I wanted the truth. I'm sorry. I know. She pushed the cracker away. Now tell me how Lucien got my signature. I don't know yet. Find out. I will. Rourke gave Damian the answer 20 minutes later. He came into Damian's office, carrying a printed security log. I approved temporary archive access for Lucien's legal team 3 months ago. They said it was for contingency financing. Damian looked up. Ashcroft records? Old resolutions and templates were included. Vivien's signature was in them. Yes. Damian stared at the log. Everybody around me keeps deciding what she can be told. Rourke held his eyes. So did you. Damian did not answer immediately. Then he sat down. Yes. Rourke placed the log in front of him. Lucien's attorney came into the archive twice after access was approved. The second visit was 9 weeks before the gala. Selina's credentials were active that night. And Vantage? Formed the next morning. Damian read the dates again, then called Chen and Carolyn. Minutes later, all 4 were on the same line. Chen matched the access log against the financing file. Vantage had been created the morning after that second visit, and the forged consent had been inserted 2 days before the gala. The dates told the story on their own. Lucian had started setting the deal in place long before Vivien knew her marriage was about to be used to trigger it. "There's one problem for him," Chen said. "We can replace the Ashcroft guarantee without Vantage." "It'll cost us," Damian said. "Yes. But we can do it." "Yes." Vivien looked at Carolyn, so he never had to save the company. Carolyn shook her head. He needed everyone to believe he did. She opened the final page of the file. "The ratification meeting is still scheduled for tomorrow morning," Damian answered immediately. "Cancel it." Vivien looked at the copied signature. "No." No one spoke through the speaker. "Vivien," Damian said, "whoever put my name on that document still thinks it works. If we cancel now, everyone gets a phone call and 12 hours to rewrite the story. That room is going to turn ugly." "I know. You don't need to be there." Vivien ran one finger beneath the consent line. "Yes, I do. Why? Because they used my name. I want the person who expects this paper to hold up to look at me when they ask whether I signed it." Carolyn leaned back. Damian's voice came through the speaker. "You're sure?" Vivien looked at the forged signature. "No." Then she looked at Carolyn. "I'm still going." Carolyn picked up her pen. "Then the meeting stays." Damian exhaled. "What do you need from me?" "Go in as if nothing has changed," Carolyn said. "Do not warn Lucian." Vivien added, "Not one word." "I won't." The call ended. Vivien stayed looking at the phone. "I wish I hadn't asked him about March." Carolyn did not tell her that knowing was better. She only slid the crackers back across the table. Vivien took one. This time she finished it. Vivien slept badly. At 2:14 a.m., she gave up and turned on the lamp. The apartment had begun to acquire familiar sounds. The pipe behind the wall, the elevator cables shifting 2 floors away, a delivery truck braking on the street below. None of them belonged to the mansion. That was supposed to be comforting. Vivien checked her phone. Nothing from Damian. She had told him not to contact her unless it involved the baby, the trust, or the meeting. He was finally respecting the boundary. She still stared at his name. "Ridiculous," she whispered. Then she put the phone face down and lay back down. By 7, she was dressed in dark trousers, a cream blouse, and low heels. She put saltines in her bag before leaving. At Carolyn's office, Selena signed the sworn statement, initialed the message printouts, and left with her lawyer. Neither woman mentioned Damian. Cold rain had started by the time Vivien and Carolyn reached the Volkov riverfront offices in Brooklyn. Inside, a man near the elevators wore a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. Marco was waiting at security. "Vivien," he had dropped both surnames. "Marco, you're cleared upstairs. Selena's in a separate room. Lucian doesn't know she's here." "Keep it that way," Marco lowered his voice. "If I tell you to leave, you leave." "Was that an order?" "That was me trying very hard to still have a job tomorrow," Vivien almost smiled. "There." The elevator doors opened. Another set chimed behind them. Vivien knew who it was before she turned. Damian stepped out. She knew his walk before she fully turned around. The familiarity hit first. The anger followed a second later. He looked tired, not the polished version he carried into meetings. His eyes went to her face, briefly to her stomach, then back again. He kept his hands in his coat pockets. "Everything ready?" he asked Carolyn. "Yes." Then he looked at Vivien. "You don't have to be in that room." "You already tried that sentence." A flicker crossed his face. "Right?" He stepped aside without reaching for her or asking to speak alone. Vivien walked past him. "Vivien?" She turned. "If Lucian realizes what's happening before the lenders freeze the deal, don't argue with him." "I'm not afraid of Lucian." "I know. I'm telling you, I know what he does when he thinks he's cornered." Vivien looked at Marco, then back at Damian. "If Marco tells me to leave, I'll leave." Some tension left Damian's face. "Thank you." At 9:58, Vivien stood outside the boardroom with one hand on the strap of her bag. Carolyn glanced at her. "Last chance. To leave? To throw up?" Vivien looked at her. "Comforting." "I try." The doors opened. 11 voting members were already seated. Some were executives whose names appeared in annual reports. 3 were men. Vivien had never seen named publicly, but she had watched Damian stand when they entered a room. Two lender representatives sat at the far end. The Ashcroft Trust administrator sat near Carolyn. Lucian was beside the Vantage attorney. He was reaching for a glass of water when Vivien entered. His hand stopped. Only for a second. Damian saw it too. "Vivien," Lucian said. She took her seat without answering. Damian sat across from her. Vivien opened her folder. The forged consent was on top. Her name sat at the bottom of a decision someone else had made for her. The door closed behind them. The Vantage attorney spoke for 4 minutes before the lender's compliance counsel cut in. "Mrs. Ashcroft, before we proceed, we need your confirmation of the consent attached to the terminal pledge." A copy of the document was placed in front of Vivien. Her signature sat at the bottom, as neatly as if she had put it there herself. Vivien remembered her father making her read school forms before signing them. "If your name is on it, you should know what you agreed to." She lifted her eyes. "I didn't sign this." The attorney blinked. "I'm sorry? That signature is mine. This document isn't." Nobody moved for a second. Then Carolyn opened her folder. The signature was copied from an Ashcroft Women's Initiative authorization signed 2 years ago. She placed the older page beside the Vantage consent. Same break in the final letter, same scanner artifact, same pixel pattern. The lender representative leaned forward. The Vantage attorney picked up both pages. This could be a document processing error. Carolyn looked at him. "Then you should be very interested in how it happened." Lucian spoke for the first time. "Someone in legal probably attached the wrong signature page." "Maybe," Carolyn said. She reached for another folder. The boardroom door opened. Selina entered with her lawyer. Lucian's expression broke for barely a second, but Vivien saw it. "What are you doing here?" Selina took the empty chair at the far end of the table. "What I should have done before the gala." Her lawyer placed a printed message log in front of the lender representatives. Lucian leaned back. "Anything she says now is self-serving." Selina nodded. "Yes, I'm protecting myself." That answer threw him more than a denial would have. "The messages can be authenticated," her lawyer said. Carolyn turned one page toward the room. "Once she walks, the trust gets defensive. Vantage closes before the bank reprices the terminal." Vivien had already seen the words. Hearing them read in that room was different. "Once she walks." Lucian had reduced 8 years of marriage and an unborn child to a reaction he thought he could predict. Lucian looked at Selina. "You were paid for information." "Yes." "You slept with Damian while he was married." Selina's face tightened. "Yes. And now everyone should trust you?" Damian answered. "No." Lucian turned toward him. Damian looked at the printed messages. "They don't have to trust her. Authenticate the records." Lucian gave a bitter smile. "Your wife on one side, your mistress on the other. This is what your leadership looks like now?" Damian did not look at Vivien. "I slept with Selina for 8 months. That was my decision. If this board wants a vote on me because of it, call one." No one interrupted him. "But don't use what I did to sell this deal." Vivien looked at him. He had not turned the admission into an apology or asked anyone to admire him for making it. That made it easier to hear. Lucian turned toward Chen. "The company needs liquidity." Chen opened a folder. "It needs financing. It does not need Vantage. 2 existing lenders will replace the facility. The rate is higher, but the terminal stays out of the collateral package." He gave the number. A few people exchanged looks. The rate would hurt, but the company could absorb it. Then Rourke stood. "I approved temporary archive access for Lucian's legal team 3 months ago. Building logs show 2 after-hours visits. Selina's credentials were active on the 2nd. Vantage Harbor Partners was formed the next morning." He placed the logs on the table. Lucian stared at him. "You're doing this now?" Rourke did not answer. One of the lender representatives looked at the Vantage attorney. "Was the related party option disclosed to your credit committee?" The attorney did not answer quickly enough. Lucian pushed back from the table. "Fine. You want to talk about risk? Talk about him." He pointed at Damian. "Federal pressure is already tightening. Rival families are testing us. Your chairman turned his mistress into a public scandal and handed every enemy in New York proof that his own house is unstable. Nobody interrupted. And now his wife controls assets under the company while deciding whether she still wants his name. Damian nodded once. Maybe I am the risk. Lucian stopped. Damian looked around the table. When this meeting ends, I step aside as chairman for 90 days. Chen runs legitimate operations with the board. Keep the independent controls around Ashcroft-backed assets. At the end of 90 days, if you want a leadership vote, hold it. Vivien turned toward him before she meant to. Damian noticed. He did not smile. Lucian stared at him. You think stepping aside saves you? No. Damian leaned forward. It removes me from the excuse you're using to take that terminal. The senior lender representative closed the Vantage folder. The transaction is suspended pending authentication of the consent and communications. The trust administrator followed. The Ashcroft Trust rejects the consent currently in the file. One of the voting members looked at Lucian. Your operational authority is frozen until the investigation is complete. Lucian stood slowly and buttoned his jacket. His eyes settled on Vivien. You just protected the company of the man you left. Vivien glanced at the forged signature. I protected my name. And his terminal. Vivien pushed the forged consent toward the center of the table. You don't get to use my marriage as a trigger and my signature as permission. Nobody stopped Lucian when he walked out. The door closed behind Lucian and the room immediately broke into motion. Phones came out, papers changed hands, and the lawyers began talking over one another in low voices. Vivien stayed seated. Her hands were shaking beneath the table. She waited until they steadied enough to pick up her bag. Damian approached and stopped several feet away. I meant what I said. About stepping down? Yes. Then do it. I will. His eyes dropped briefly toward her stomach. Can I ask you something? Vivien waited. Is the baby all right? Of all the things he could have asked, that was the one that got through. The baby is fine. Damian let out a breath. Thank you. Vivien adjusted the strap of her bag. Don't make me regret telling you. I won't. She held his eyes for a second, then she left. In the elevator, Carolyn stood beside her without speaking. Vivien took a saltine from her bag and bit into it. It tasted like cardboard. She started laughing. Carolyn glanced over. Vivien tried to stop. The laugh broke in the middle and became a sob. She covered her mouth. I'm sorry. Carolyn handed her a tissue. For what? That made Vivien cry harder. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, she had wiped her face. She looked down at the half-eaten cracker. I thought I'd feel better. Carolyn looked at her. I know. Vivien took another bite and made a face. Still terrible. Carolyn laughed. This time, after a second, Vivien did too. The Vantage deal died that morning. Everything else took longer. No one arrested Lucian in the boardroom. The messages had to be authenticated. Bank records had to be subpoenaed. Investigators had to trace the archive access and the forged consent. For 3 weeks, Vivien heard almost nothing. Then one Tuesday morning, while she was sitting in her obstetrician's waiting room, her phone lit up. Lucian Volkov, charged in Vantage fraud investigation. She opened the article. Fraud, conspiracy, financial crimes tied to the Vantage transaction. Across from her, a pregnant woman was arguing quietly with her husband about baby names. Absolutely not Theodore. What's wrong with Theodore? Everything. The husband looked offended. Vivien almost smiled. A few months earlier, she and Damian had done the same thing. He had rejected one name because of a man he hated in college, and another because a waiter with that name had once spilled wine on him. She had laughed until she cried. Vivien locked her phone before the article finished loading. The nurse opened the door. Mrs. Volkov? Vivien looked up. Ashcroft, the nurse glanced at the chart. Sorry, Miss Ashcroft. It's fine. It still pinched when she corrected someone, though less than it had the week before. Selina resigned and kept cooperating. Lucian's case moved forward. Damian served the full 90 days away from the chairmanship, while Chen kept the legitimate company running. Carolyn mentioned the changes while working through the divorce. Vivien never asked for updates, but she listened anyway. Damian did not contest the divorce. He did not come to the apartment. He did not send jewelry or ask Marco to carry messages around Carolyn. Most importantly, he did not use the baby to force a conversation. Some days, that made things easier. Other days, the silence was the thing that hurt. At 24 weeks, Vivien sat in her car after another ultrasound. The print lay on the passenger seat. The baby had one hand curled near his face. Everything looked normal. The baby was healthy and growing exactly as he should. Vivien took a picture of the ultrasound with her phone. Then she opened Damian's contact. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could send it through Carolyn. Cleaner that way. Safer. She looked at the tiny profile in the photograph. Whatever had ended between her and Damian, this was still his son. Vivien typed, 24-week scan was normal. He's healthy. She read it twice and pressed send. 2 minutes later, the phone buzzed. Thank you for telling me. Nothing else followed. No request to see her. No question designed to keep the conversation alive. Vivien put the phone in her lap. Then she cried. Not because the message was cruel. Because it was careful. Once, an appointment like this would have ended with a call from the parking garage. Damian would have asked too many questions, including at least one the doctor had never discussed, and Vivien would have laughed at him for acting as though she had completed medical school during the scan. She cried for that version of the pregnancy. The one she had expected to have. Carolyn never told her what any of it was supposed to mean. She brought food, complained about parking, replaced a lamp in the apartment because the old one, in her words, made the living room look like a dentist's waiting room. Vivien appreciated that more than advice. When the 90 days ended, Damian returned to some of his responsibilities, but not all of them. He left Chen's new controls in place and kept independent oversight around Ashcroft-backed assets. Vivien noticed. She did not call him to say so. Near the end of her pregnancy, Vivien woke before dawn with a pain low in her abdomen. She waited. It came again. By the third contraction, she called her doctor. By sunrise, she was in the hospital. Vivien Ashcroft arrived early Tuesday morning, healthy, loud, furious about the lights. When the nurse placed him against Vivien's chest, she stared at him as if somebody had handed her something impossible. His face was red. His eyes were squeezed shut, one tiny fist pushed against the blanket. Vivien laughed. Then she cried. The nurse smiled. Good lungs. So I noticed. Hours later, after Adrian had been cleaned up and Vivien was settled into the room, she studied his face again. His nose might have been hers. It was too early to tell. But his mouth, Vivien frowned. Oh, come on. Carolyn looked up from the chair beside the bed. What? His mouth. Carolyn leaned closer, then smiled. I'm saying nothing. It looks like Damian. Still saying nothing. Vivien touched one finger to Adrian's cheek. He opened his mouth, frowned in his sleep, and settled again. Fine, she whispered. You can keep the mouth. A few hours later, once both mother and baby were stable, Carolyn stepped into the hallway and called Damian. Vivien had agreed to that much. Carolyn returned several minutes later. He knows. Vivien looked at Adrian. What did he say? First he asked whether you're both all right. And then, he asked if he could come. Vivien's hand stopped against the blanket. What did you tell him? That you hadn't invited him. And, he said, then I won't. Vivien nodded. That should have felt like relief. Instead, she looked at Adrian and pressed her lips together. Damian did not come to the hospital, and he sent no messages afterward. When Vivien brought Adrian home, the apartment stayed quiet. For 3 days, she thought about calling Damian. She didn't. By the end of the first week, she thought about it less often. 11 days after Adrian was born, she picked up the phone. Damian answered before the second ring. Vivien? She heard the surprise. You can meet him tomorrow at 2. Damian was silent for a second. I'll be there. He arrived 7 minutes early. Carolyn was in the kitchen. Vivien sat on the couch with Adrian asleep against her chest. Damian stopped just inside the living room. Vivien had watched him enter courtrooms, boardrooms, and dinners full of men who hated him without ever seeming unsure where to stand. Now he looked at the chair as if he needed permission to cross the room. Sit. He sat. His eyes went to Adrian immediately. The baby made a small sound. Damian leaned forward. He's healthy? Yes. No problems? No. He nodded and looked at Adrian again. He looks like you. Vivien looked down. Most of him. A small smile appeared on Damian's face. Unfortunately, that mouth is yours. He laughed once. Then his eyes filled. He looked away quickly. Vivien saw it. Neither spoke for a moment. Vivien, before you say anything, I need to know something. Damian stopped. She shifted Adrian higher against her chest. Can you do this without using him to get back to me? Damian looked at his son, then at her. Yes. If you say you're coming, you come. If you can't, you tell him before I have to explain it to him. I will, Vivien swallowed. And Damian, I know. She waited. He looked at Adrian. This isn't us. It's him. Vivien nodded once. Good. Adrian stirred. One tiny hand slipped free of the blanket. Vivien stood. Hold out your arms. Damian froze. What? You heard me. He held out his arms slowly. Vivien had imagined this moment before Adrian was born. In every version, Damian had been sitting beside her, close enough that she could touch his shoulder. She placed Adrian against his chest. Damian stopped breathing for a second. His arms tightened around the baby by instinct. Vivien shifted toward the open place beside him. Her body remembered the picture before her mind did. She stopped. Then she crossed to the chair opposite and sat down. Damian did not seem to notice. He was looking at Adrian. The baby's nose wrinkled. Damian swallowed. Damian swallowed once and looked down at his son. Hi. Vivien lowered her eyes. She had wanted this exact scene for months, back when she still believed it would happen inside their marriage. Adrian made a small complaining sound. Damian looked alarmed. What does that mean? Vivien almost laughed. He's 11 days old. Sometimes it means he has lungs. Damian looked at her. A smile escaped before she could stop it. It disappeared quickly. Neither of them mentioned it. For the next 20 minutes, they talked about feeding, doctor appointments, and what Damian needed to know before he ever took Adrian alone. At the door, Damian stopped. Thank you for letting me meet him. Vivien held Adrian against her shoulder. Next Thursday, 4 o'clock. Damian looked surprised. Here? For now, I'll be here, he was. The next Thursday too. And the one after that. 4 years later, the glass door outside Vivien's office still read, Ashcroft Holdings. The divorce had been final for years. The Volkov companies kept their name. The assets belonging to her family stayed under hers. On Thursday afternoons, Adrian spent the last hour of Vivien's workday in her office, waiting for Damian to pick him up. At 4, he was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, driving 2 toy cars through a stack of acquisition papers he had been told not to touch. Dad's late. Vivien checked the clock. Your father is 2 minutes early. Adrian frowned at the wall clock. That's almost late. That is not how time works. He considered this and drove 1 car across her contract anyway. Vivien took it from him. Also not how paper works. The elevator chimed. Adrian was on his feet before the doors finished opening. Dad, Damian stepped out carrying a small blue backpack. You left this at my house. Adrian ran toward him. I was saving it there. For what? Damian caught him with one arm. Later. That explanation needs work. Adrian laughed and wrapped both arms around his neck. Vivien watched from behind her desk. By then, Vivien no longer measured Damian by promises. She measured him by whether he came when he said he would. Most weeks he did. He still made mistakes. When Adrian was 3, Damian bought him a miniature electric sports car after Vivien had explicitly said no large gifts. Vivien had stared at it. What? Damian asked. It has a motor. Adrian climbed into it. I love it. Vivien pointed at Damian. Return it. He did. That mattered more to her than the car. Now Damian checked his watch. Sunday at 6? 6. I know, not 6:30. I was late once. 27 minutes, 3 years ago. I have an excellent memory. That has always been one of your more exhausting qualities. Adrian looked between them. Can Mom come for pizza? For a moment, neither adult answered. Damian did not answer for her. Vivien noticed that. Not tonight, she said. You and Dad have your evening. Adrian shrugged. Okay. Adrian accepted Thursday pickups and Sunday returns the way children accept whatever has always been true. It was simply his week. Damian held the elevator door open. Come on. Adrian ran inside. Pepperoni. We are still discussing whether pizza is happening. It is. Apparently negotiations have ended. The doors began to close. Bye, Mom. Have fun. We will. Damian looked at Vivien before the door shut. Only for a second. Years earlier, she would have spent half the night trying to decide what that look meant. Now she let it pass without naming it. The doors closed. The elevator numbers began to fall. Vivien turned away before they reached the 4th floor. Carolyn was waiting in the conference room with an acquisition agreement open in front of her. She was officially semi-retired, a description nobody who knew her took seriously. You finished saying goodbye? Vivien sat down. For 4 days. Carolyn pushed the contract toward her. Then perhaps you could do the job for which I continue pretending you pay me. I do pay you. Not enough. You set your own rate. Details. Vivien smiled and picked up the document. Carolyn watched her for a moment. Everything all right? Vivien glanced through the glass wall. Ashcroft Holdings. Adrian would be back Sunday. Damian would bring him at 6. There would be school Monday, a board meeting Tuesday, and probably another argument about vegetables before the week was over. Yeah, Vivien said. Everything's fine. Carolyn tapped the contract. Then read. Vivien turned the page. Through the glass wall, Ashcroft Holdings caught the afternoon light. The elevator had already reached the lobby. Vivien turned the page and kept reading. So tell me, if you had been Vivien, would you have helped expose Lucian even though doing so also protected Damian's company? And after ending the marriage for good, would you still have let Damian become a real father to Adrian,